Welcome back to Lions News Fan Report. Something's happening behind the scenes that will shake up the entire NFC North race. A quiet storm building down in Miami, one that might just drift north toward Detroit. The whispers are starting to get louder, the kind that don't make it to press releases yet but circle around front offices, agents, and late-night calls between general managers. I'm talking about a defensive weapon who hasn't reached his ceiling yet. A player with the kind of size and motor you can't coach. And a name that's suddenly showing up in conversations out the Lions' midseason push. Phillips. Stay with me, because this one connects dots between cap flexibility, timing, and a move that could turn Detroit's defense from respected to fear. We all know Brad Holmes has been building this roster methodically, with every move matching. A long-term philosophy, toughness, versatility, and leadership. But now, as the trade deadline approaches, the Lions are standing on the edge of something bigger. They're not the hunters anymore. They're the hunted. Every contender is looking for that last piece to tilt the balance. And Detroit's biggest question right now isn't at quarterback or wideout or running back. It's whether this defense can create chaos when the lights are brightest. The sack numbers have been good, not great. The pressure rate is solid, but when Hutchinson is doubled, the secondary feels it. That's the missing piece Holmes has been hunting quietly since August, and that's exactly where Phillips enters the picture. Phillips isn't a rumor mill name by accident. At 25 years old, 6'5", 260 pounds, he checks every box for what Detroit wants on the edge. Explosive get-off, long arms to seal the run, a relentless motor that plays until the whistle. But here's what makes the idea fascinating. Despite that natural talent, his time in Miami has been uneven. Injuries stalled his momentum, and while the Dolphins have one of the most talented rosters in the league, they're also pressed against the cap. That combination, raw upside, a contract still manageable, and a team needing flexibility, is what makes trade talks possible. People inside the league are already floating the scenario. If the Dolphins start listening to calls, the Lions will be one of the first to dial. Now, don't misunderstand me. Nothing about this is official yet. Miami coach Mike McDaniel went on record calling trade chatter baseless, but we've seen this before. The NFL's most impactful trades often start with public denials. Think about how the Lions landed C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year. That wasn't announced with fireworks either. It came from opportunity meeting preparation. That's the same energy here. Detroit's scouting department has been quietly monitoring pass rush production around the league, especially among younger players with untapped ceilings. Phillips fits perfectly into that target profile. When healthy, his tape tells the whole story. Over 5 seasons, he's stacked 25 sacks and more than 100 pressures. But the numbers don't tell you how violent his first step looks on film or how disruptive he is when he's allowed to attack in space. He's not just an edge rusher. He's a problem solver. Miami has used him both as a stand-up linebacker and a hand-in-the-dirt end, and that versatility is gold in Aaron Glenn's hybrid defense. Imagine him on one side and Hutchinson on the other, one collapsing the edge, the other attacking from depth, creating confusion in every protection call. It would force offenses to pick their poison on every snap. Financially, the Lions could make it work. They've managed their cap beautifully, with extensions like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell structured to leave breathing room. Phillips. Current deal wouldn't break the bank. His average annual value sits in the mid-first contract range. Detroit could take him in now, let him finish the season as part of a playoff run, then explore an extension in the offseason once they know how he fits long-term. For a front office that's been careful not to overpay for short-term help, this is one of those rare cases where the risk is actually worth the bet. But beyond the numbers, this would send a message, a big one. Bringing in Phillips says, "We're done waiting for next year." It says the Lions are ready to go all in right now, that they believe this locker room is mature enough and hungry enough to handle expectations. Because let's be honest, Detroit's no longer sneaking up on anyone. They're the team everyone wants to measure themselves against. Every offensive coordinator who faces the Lions knows that if they neutralize Hutchinson, they can survive. Add Phillips, and that equation disappears. You turn every second down into a guessing game, every third down into panic. There's another angle worth noting. Detroit's culture under Dan Campbell thrives on personalities that mix toughness with humility. Phillips fits that mold better than people realize. Coming out of college, he was known as a grinder, the kind of player who built his career after early injuries and setbacks. That resilience would resonate in this locker room. You pair that mentality with a coaching staff that emphasizes grit over glamour, and you get an environment where he could thrive in a way he never fully did in Miami. That's the human side of the trade conversation. And in Detroit, culture matters as much as stats. The timing of all this is crucial. The trade deadline is approaching fast, and the Lions' schedule between now and then includes 2 conference matchups that could define playoff seeding. That means any move they make has to help immediately. Holmes isn't looking for a developmental project. He's looking for production that changes games in November and December. And with Miami sitting at a crossroads, still loaded with defensive talent but needing flexibility, a trade partner like Detroit becomes appealing. The Lions could package a future second-round pick, maybe a conditional pick based on playoff performance, and get a deal done without mortgaging the future. For Miami, that's value. For Detroit, that's acceleration. Of course, there's risk. Phillips' health record isn't spotless. Soft tissue injuries, minor setbacks, the kind that frustrate coaching staffs because they interrupt rhythm. But look at how Detroit has handled players like Jameson Williams and Brian Branch. They're patient, they invest in recovery, and when the player's ready, they unleash him fully. That's the kind of environment Phillips could use right now, one where the staff trusts the process, not just the headlines. He doesn't need to be a savior. He needs to be part of a rotation that wears down offenses snap after snap. And let's not forget the optics. Miami isn't likely to just hand him over. They'll posture, deny, and test the market. But the whispers persist because teams around the league see something they like. One NFC executive put it simply this: weak if Yellen Phillips becomes available. Half the league calls. That's the buzz Detroit can't ignore. Even if this doesn't materialize by the deadline, just being in those conversations positions the Lions as serious players in the defensive talent market, not passive observers. So, where does this leave us? As of today, Phillips remains a Dolphin. But momentum in the NFL changes fast. One phone call, one negotiation shift, one decision to prioritize future cap health, and suddenly, a player like him becomes the key to a contender's final push. The Lions are exactly that kind of contender now. They're in a window that's wide open, with a roster that's deep, unified, and balanced, but still one piece away from turning dominance into inevitability. If Holmes sees the same opportunity many of us see, don't be surprised if Detroit makes noise before the deadline. And that's why this story matters. This isn't about chasing a headline. It's about understanding where the Lions are in their evolution. You don't spend years building a foundation just to stop short when the house is one wall away from being complete. Whether Phillips ends up in Honolulu Blue or not, the fact that Detroit is in these conversations tells you how far this franchise has come. From rebuilding to reloading, that's the new reality in the Motor City. Now I want to hear from you. Lions fans, what do you think? Would you take the chance on Yellen Phillips? Would adding him alongside Hutchinson and Alan McNeil make this defense truly elite? Drop your thoughts below, because this could be the move that defines our season. And if you love getting inside stories like this, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and stay tuned right here on Lions News Fan Report, where we break down the real moves before they happen.